Good afternoon, my friends. The doctor is in the house. I'm back from a 2-week hiatus, but I'm glad to be here with you guys on this happy Wednesday. Welcome back to another episode of To Your Health with Dr. G. My name is Dr. Mark Gomez. I'm a board-certified internal medicine physician practicing out of Edward Hospital in Naperville, Illinois. So welcome back. I'm so excited to talk about what we're going to talk about today because it really hits home. As a parent myself, trying to balance not only my life, but the lives of my kids and relationships, this topic today is going to be super important. And again, what we talk about on this show, it's really about building the health and building truth, building trust, and delivering that truth. And so, all in all today, we're going to be talking about a great topic of mine, and I'm excited to launch my new series, Back to School Health Series Part 1, Social and Emotional Health of Our Youth. Again, each week on this show, we break down really the important things for you to know as people out there, as you're taking care of your health, as you're taking care of your lives, as you're taking care of your family. We want people to have all the resources to be successful with their health in whatever way that health is. And the best place to start is right here, again, starting with me and my esteemed guests. Again, we're here today to build trust and to deliver that truth. So before we get into the show, I want to just quickly acknowledge our sponsor today. Our sponsor today is Main Street Candy and Toys. You can check them out at www.mainstreetcandyandtoys.com. Excellent. So we're here today. We're going to talk about this new series, and I kind of came up with this idea as my kids are coming back into school, and my son just started with preschool today, and my daughter started first grade a couple weeks ago. So when my wife and I were kind of trying to develop this kind of show, we said, hey, you know what? It's almost fall. We're still in summer, of course, but it's almost fall, and everybody's getting back to school. So how can we make health work? And what are the important things for us? And I said, why not talk about what it's like to be a caregiver, but also to basically leverage my network of experts as they experience various forms of giving advice and caregiving from a personal level to, again, how do we help address the social and emotional health of our youth? Let me hit you with a quick disclaimer. All right. The content of To Your Health with Dr. G is for informational and entertainment purposes only, and that the content is not intended to be a substitute for professional medical advice, diagnosis, and/or treatment. Further details can be found at www.toyourhealthwithdrg.com/disclaimer. Again, so we're here today talking about really one of the key things that came out a few weeks ago, and we try to keep things nice and relevant. Again, it's important for us as health educators, and we really are educators in all shapes and forms. I mean, I've had physicians on this show, I've had allied health professionals, I've had business leaders, community leaders, public health officials. We're all trying to do the same thing. We're all trying to figure out how do we solve a problem, but a lot of times we go about it a little bit differently, but we're also trying to work equally to, again, improve the health of the communities that we live in and serve in. So today we're going to be talking about, again, the social and emotional health of our youth. So what I want to do is hit you with a couple quick facts. Fact number 1. Play is foundational to physical, mental, and neurocognitive development in children. Fact number 2, American kids are playing a lot less these days. Number 3, from 1981 to 1997, children's playtime decreased by 25%. Number 4, a national survey of almost 9,000 preschool children and parents found that only 51% of children went outside to walk or play once per day with either parent. 2 more quick facts. 30% of U.S. kindergarten children no longer have recess. And when I read that stat, I go, oh my gosh, I remember recess was the best time ever. And last but not least, recently that I alluded to, back last month on August 20th, the American Academy of Pediatrics now has advised physicians to prescribe play. We'll talk a little bit about that. So what I want to do is introduce my guests today, and I'm so excited to have them here, and I know them all very well. So my first guest to my right, she's been on the show before. She is fantastic. She and I are representing Loyola University Medical Center, or Loyola Strict School of Medicine. I should be more precise. I'm not technically working for Loyola anymore. But Dr. Kate Johnson and I were in medical school together, classmates, graduated from Strict School of Medicine. So I want to welcome Dr. Kate Johnson, who's assistant professor, board-certified adult and child adolescent psychiatrist at Loyola University Medical Center. Check her out at www.loyolamedicine.org. Dr. Johnson, welcome to the show.
Nice to be back, Mark. Thanks.
Hey, why don't you tell us a little bit about you, where you did your training, and what does this theme mean to you today?
So, like you said, I did medical school here at Loyola. I did my general psych residency and my child and adolescent fellowship at University of North Carolina in Chapel Hill. And in my current practice, I see adults, and then I see some kids as well, usually with my residents and in the training setup. And this is a constant topic that kids are just not given the time to kind of play and kind of work through what they need to work through while they're doing it. And honestly, adults aren't either, right? So I think this is a good foundation to set when they're little, and we're working on their development and everything, but it also is going to carry through well. So I'll see maybe less of them then too.
Well, thank you, Dr. Johnson. And you're really talking about, it's important to be comfortable having these kind of conversations. And so this is why we're here to try to give people some information that they can then use and take and share with their whether they're medical provider or other important people in their lives. My second guest, he and I have known each other for a long time, and he's a good friend of mine. Actually, I work more with his wife, who's a cardiologist, but I know this individual very well. I usually see him a couple times a year, either at a hospital function or certainly at what I call Dr. Prom every spring. We have good times there. So anyway, I want to introduce just my esteemed colleague, Dr. Stephen Kovar. He's a board-certified pediatrician at Kids First Pediatrics Ltd. Check him out, www.kidsfirstdocs.com. Dr. Kovar, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
Hey, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself, where you did some of your training, and how this theme of today really is important to you as a pediatrician?
Right. Well, I went to medical school at University of Illinois, Chicago, and then I did my residency at Hope Children's Hospital down on the south side, and then I've been in practice for 16 years in the private sector in the western suburbs. And obviously this is going to be important to me. As a pediatrician, we deal with developmental, a lot of my job is developmental pediatrics and care for the kids and making sure that they can grow up to be great individuals and great adults. So part of it is making sure intellectually but also emotionally they grow up to be healthy human beings, which is a good chunk of the job. And a lot of parents, we know what we know, but we also don't know what we don't know, and sometimes parents can get very nervous about, are they doing the right things for their kids? So my job is to make sure to tell them, yes, you're doing the right things for your kids, but also here's some things we can do to make sure you can have a great relationship with your kids, because that's a huge part of my job, is making sure the kids and the parents are getting along, and make sure everyone grows up to be, like I said, good, happy, healthy human beings.
There you go. Thanks, Dr. Kovar. And my last guest, she and I reconnected recently through a colleague of mine who's a toy store owner. Actually happens to be the sponsor of today's show, but when I heard about this next individual's credentials, I was very impressed, and I said, hey, she's bringing a wealth of information to this topic of today, so I was like, okay, we got to get her on the show. So I want to introduce my third guest, Ms. Kimberly Mosley, President of the American Specialty Toy Retailing Association. Check her out, www.astratoy.org. Kimberly, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Mark. It's a pleasure.
Hey, so why don't you just give us a little bit about your background on even how you got to this point in life, what you're doing with your organization, with the American Specialty Toy Retailing Association, and how is this theme of today so important to you?
Oh, I'd love to. So as you can imagine, the members of our organization are toy store owners, like your sponsor today. And as you've met your sponsor, you probably have learned how important play is to those toy store owners. Our members recognize the importance of play. They're not just putting any kind of product on their shelves, they're putting quality products on their shelves and making sure that the kids and adults in their communities are best served by the products that they put on their shelves. They recognize how important play is for good child development. Play is very important for all of us, children and adults.
Talk you very much. So how we now that you guys met the panel, what I like to do every week when I host a show, I like to always add in some of the medical themes. So as we talk about this topic today, I like to call it the chief complaint. And my physician colleagues on the panel know exactly what that means, but the chief complaint is somewhat of a medical show, but also fun, full of entertainment. But the chief complaint is when somebody comes into your office and they're there for a specific reason. So our chief complaint, aka the question of the hour today, is, now that school is back in session, what are we doing to best minimize the social and emotional health burdens placed on our youth? And almost kind of like, how did we get here? Because you guys are going to hear some good stories today on things that we did, but maybe the things that we did, maybe I'm just out of touch. I hope not. I still try to keep my cool and my my hipness going on, but it's important, to see where things gone because really when the American Academy of Pediatrics came with their statement a few weeks ago, I read it and I was like, wow, they're really painting a situation that can potentially turn into a dire situation. So I'm going to ask Dr. Johnson the first question: how did we get here?
Well, that's a really good question. And I think part of it sort of built, I think, over a lot of years. I think that we get into these ideas of like, oh, I have to do X, Y, and Z. I have to check these boxes. And my kids, oh, so-and-so's kids are doing these 5 activities, and so I can't let my kids fall behind. Like, I think that's probably the driving force for a lot of parents is I don't want my kids to be, deprived of anything. I don't want my kids to not have the same opportunities as other kids. And so it's suddenly turned into like, okay, we have ballet and we have swim lessons and we have this and we have that and we have like interpretive dance and it's this will look good on a college essay even though your kid's like 6. Like I think there's a lot of that that's just kind of come together and it's just sort of built on itself and then we've kind of built on each other and I think there's also there's a lot more with the electronics these days and there's a lot more just stuff to contend with and I think unfortunately this is kind of where we've gotten and so I'm really glad to hear that the American Academy of Pediatrics is sort of like, whoa, let's put the reins on this and let's make happy, healthy kids who are going to be successful adults whether or not they can do interpretive dance.
And interpretive dance I would definitely not be good at, let's just be honest and lay down the
I think you could pull it off. I think you'd be good.
So I want to ask this next question, Dr. Kovar, because I remember as a kid, yes, I stayed busy. My parents had me involved in so many activities, and I still remember some of those great memories, and I think that really set a foundation. But is it me, or does it seem like, I felt like we had some free time, playtime, but so why does it seem like kids now are so much more busier than when we were kids?
Right. Well, there's obviously a lot of possibilities for that. But the biggest thing is that right now both parents are usually working, so parents have less time with them. So some kids are just kind of shuttled off to different places. Here we're going to go here, we're going to go here, so that they're kept busy. But I think as kind of was alluded to earlier, that with social media, everyone's looking at my best friend's son is doing this, and this, so my kid has to do that, or there's a lot of keeping up with the Joneses. And so unfortunately with that, there's only 24 hours in the day, and because right now there's more emphasis on I don't want to say more emphasis on education, but the emphasis is you have to be the best in your class, you have to do this, so you have to go to your school, but then you have to do your tutor for your school because you're in kindergarten and you have to color within the lines because that's what's going to be needed, and as again was said, if you don't do it, you're not going to get into college, and so we're going to have to do that. And so the play aspect of development in pediatrics seems to have taken a back seat, and it's seen as more of it's a time waster. I think that's kind of the way that it has been viewed recently, and it's your kid just sat and played for an hour, like colored in a book. Why weren't they writing their one-woman memoir? And that's the way that it's being seen. It's seen as a waste, and so then parents are trying to fill that quote-unquote wasted time with something quote-unquote productive, but unfortunately it's taking away from what kids really need, which is that time to just relax. And kids are pushed and stressed into so many different, and they're pulled into so many different directions that they don't get that chance to be a kid, which is so important. And as you said, when we were kids, the joke is when did we come home when the lights went on and the moon was just when the sun was setting? That's when we came home. Now also with technology and with all the other things, kids they're tracked, they're pushed to so many different things. They don't have that, and everything's so scheduled. And because we as parents have become, I think, a little bit more regimented and more rigid in some things, we overschedule them, and then it doesn't give them that opportunity, and that's a shame for kids. So I think what you said is right, that we don't have those opportunities anymore.
Kim, how do we avoid falling into some of the pitfalls of saying, okay, hey, this family, they're doing this with their kids, this family's doing this with kids, so I feel compelled to do this. How do we avoid that? Because again, we didn't have these kind of challenges, at least, as kids, of course, you're kind of oblivious to even sometimes your existence, to things certainly younger, but it seemed like, it just seemed like we just stumbled across this. But how do we avoid falling into the pitfalls of just falling into the trap? And now you're that parent, right, or you're that caregiver who's now busting your kid all over the place, and they don't get any playtime.
Well, I think as parents and as grandparents or caregivers, we've got to recognize the importance of play. I think this pendulum maybe is beginning to swing back. I think the work that the American Academy of Pediatrics has just come out with is going to help. I think by recognizing as a parent or caregiver that play is just as important as academia, is just as important as some of the other activities that you're putting your child in. Through play, children learn, they solve problems, they become more creative, they learn how to interact with one another. There is a very, very funny video that's on YouTube right now with kids playing Uno and the frustration that they have when they don't win or they get a card that's not going to help them or help their big brother is going to win. And you can kind of see the problem solving that's happening there, the recognizing the emotion that they're feeling and how to handle that emotion and how to handle losing the game. And the next time you play the game, you might be the winner and your big brother might be the loser. It's through play that children come to these conclusions. It's through play that they gain that kind of knowledge. And parents and other caregivers are going to recognize that. They're going to see the growth and the learning that happens when children play.
Excellent. So thank you. I love that reference because I've played Uno many times with my kids. Now, my 4-year-old, I don't know if he really knows what's going on, but my 6-year-old, yeah, she's had some challenges. She sort of gets frustrated if she loses. And it's so funny, when I used to play that game when I was a kid, my brother would draw the thing, it'd be draw 4, and you're like, well, I just got to draw 4 cards and just keep going. But we didn't really make a big fuss about it.
Right.
And then I hit him back with a draw 2. So essentially that game is still around. But yeah, we played in our house.
But when you watch that video, you can see the older children, how they are reacting compared to some of the younger children. You see that progression. You see how as they do it more, as they play more, they gain some of those social and emotional skills.
Excellent. Dr. Johnson, why don't you tell us a little bit more about just some of the mental health aspects, the benefits that you can get from playtime?
So I think you hit on that very nicely, actually. Like, there's a lot of problem solving. There's a lot of emotion regulation that kind of happens. You learn how to negotiate that piece of like, okay, but I didn't get what I wanted, but maybe I will next time. Or, the other thing that happens, especially in sort of like free play, is, kids work out a lot of stuff when in their imaginative play, right? And so we often see kids engaging in what we call mastery play, and that can actually go to a level where we start to get concerned, and it tells us more that there are other things going on and we need to, kind of intervene. But often this is the way that kids have to kind of communicate that too. So that's also really important for parents. But the idea is that, you're going to kind of recreate a situation you don't really understand and don't really know how to deal with, and you're going to play through it, and maybe your dolls are going to have a conversation, or your G.I. Joes are going to tackle each other, or, like whatever, and eventually kids are going to kind of come to a conclusion of like, oh, okay, this is what I really wanted to do, or this is what I should do next time. And it really makes a huge difference in their emotional growth over time. And the other thing is, there's their little neurons are at a time when they are just growing and kind of exploding in younger kids and consolidating and, kind of being directed to where they need to be in the older kids, right? And so there's actually a lot of neurodevelopment and a lot of like changes in their brain that happen when they're engaging in this kind of play. And so we don't want to deny them that, right? Like when you think about it from a neurological perspective, they're doing huge work when they're, quote, just playing.
Dr. Kovar, since the statement just came out a few weeks ago from the American Academy of Pediatrics, how do you kind of interpret what they're saying into your day-to-day practice?
Well, I think the most important thing, and I tell parents all the time, is kids have to be kids. And, a lot of people think they're just little adults. And the answer to that is no, they're actually kids, and they need to have this time to decompress. And I explain to parents, too, that when you come home from a long day of work, you don't want to do more work. You want to just come home, take your shoes off, sit down, and just be and just exist. Kids need that exact same thing, and they can do that through play. And they can come home from school, and they can have an hour or two or whatever to just be themselves and just decompress and get back to, I don't want to say a normal state, but just kind of a normal state, and keep all the stuff that they learned in school. That's going to also come into how they're going to play, and how they're going to play is going to go back into school. So, the American Academy of Pediatrics saying, just you have this almost prescription to play, it's allowing parents to let their kids be kids, and it's almost saying it's okay. It's okay that a kid is gonna go and play dolls for an hour and a half. Because while you might think they're actually not doing something, they are problem solving. They are maybe going through something that happened to them or a friend or they saw during the day, and how are they going to react, and how are they going to problem solve and think, if this happens next time, what can I do? And that's the kind of stuff that they're saying. So really the American Academy of Pediatrics is saying it's okay to let kids be kids. Just and if it needs that you need to have almost someone's permission, like your physician's permission, then go ahead. And a lot of times nowadays people don't want to take that step. They want to have that it's okay to go ahead and do that. So in a lot of the pediatric practice, we are telling parents it's okay to let kids cry it out, or it's okay to this. And parents I think know this, but they just want to make sure that what they're doing isn't going to harm, because every parent thinks if I let my kid do X, Y, or Z, that's going to cause a problem. Every parent is thinking, oh, hey, I let them do something, and now that's why they're going to be a serial killer. Like, no, they're not going to be. They're going to be fine. They're just just because they're playing violent, like G.I. Joes are fighting, it doesn't mean that they're going to go and make that into a violent lifestyle. It's just this is just a conflict that they're having, and they're going to solve this problem. So let them do that.
Excellent. I think a lot about, again, playtime, what it did for me, and I can speak from the heart. I mean, you learn, of course, and in coping, of course, in the behavior. And I think from a physiologic standpoint, as an internist, we think about, cortisol levels. When you're so stressed out, you have these cortisol levels that are so high, it can affect the body adversely. And we're talking about, hey, you play, you start reducing those kind of levels, and you have other kind of metabolic things that happen beneficially to the body, as well as even just some of the just regular physiologic things of just staying active, running around, trying to fight the child obesity epidemic, make sure diabetes isn't on the rise in kids. I know you're seeing them all the time in your practice, Dr. Kovar. And so there's so many more benefits. So you can play and achieve top academic things as well too. It's interesting. I pulled up an article here, and they quoted that in 2001 when the No Child Left Behind Act was instituted by President George W. Bush. It encouraged classrooms as early as preschool to focus more on structured activities to promote academic results. And it turns out that actually it led to a, quote, corresponding decrease in playful learning. And so again, you're trying to get these kids to test. And I would argue, if you're in this kind of day and age in the 21st century, I want kids to be creative. I want innovation. I don't want imitation. Because when you're not creating, we're not playing, you're not being creative. And to compete, if this is our standards, that we got to compete, we got to be structured, I don't know how that's going to create innovation.
Right, and that's the thing that people that teach some of the things with the curriculums. They're teaching for the test. They're teaching so that your kindergartner is going to be ready for the SAT. And although that's an important thing, you want to have the kids, because life isn't always going to be one of these four choices. Life is going to be about here's something like it, and you have to creatively come to the actual solution. And sometimes some people get so structured that they can't think outside the box to get to that next level. And that's where play comes in, because there's going to be something that's going to happen, and the Barbie doll is not going to have an arm or something. Like, okay, well, how is she going to do this? Well, let's figure this out. Or I don't have this toy, and let me make these toys. And so there is that creativity that's just starting to get lost a little bit with kids, and it's kind of just trying to, again, the Academy, I think, let's reel it back a little bit, and let's get back to that, and let's get back to that creative play.
Kim, I want to ask you this question. I think about, we're talking a lot about, again, schools and stuff, testing for cognition, the cognitive aspects and intellectual aspects, but to get where you got to in life, to do the things, you have to have that social, those social skills, the emotional skill set as well, too. It can't just be purely academic or cognitive.
Correct.
Can you explain more about that?
So actually, let me just piggyback on
Please go right ahead.
What Steve was saying. We are in a creativity crisis here in the United States. And it's very apparent. If you just look at TV, you're just seeing the same TV shows that we saw 10 years ago. If you look at movies, you're just seeing the same movies that we saw 10, 20 years ago. There is a creativity crisis in the U.S., and play is what's going to help us overcome that. It's through play that kids learn to be more creative. It's through play that they learn to be more innovative. It's through play that they learn how to solve problems. Play is going to help us get back to where we need to be in creativity, in innovation, and in academia. play, unstructured play, helps grow those neurons and helps children be smarter, have the knowledge to do better in academia as well as creativity.
So let me ask the next question to Dr. Johnson. I mentioned at the beginning that, we're talking about, and a lot of stuff on the show that we do is we're trying to identify a problem, and then how can we move the needle towards some concrete solutions? We may not have the solution for everything, and even today, we're not going to have a consensus on how to solve this problem because it's so unique and it's different from person to person. But we're always talking about trying to move the needle in health awareness. So when I kind of say like, hey, kids are now, they're playing a lot less these days, how do we start proposing we do this? And maybe we start at the school level. Like what changes need to happen?
That's a really good question. I think, there's a couple of different levels you could tackle that on. One thing I see a lot of is, again, parents are kind of anxious about like, what if my kid doesn't have all the opportunities they need? I need to make sure they get everything. I need to make sure that all of their time is, structured and whatever. There's also, I think a lot of this comes out of this larger culture of fear that we've kind of developed. And some of that relates to like you said before, we would just kind of be out like riding our bikes and the street lights would come on and we'd come home, and parents nowadays, no way. But even to the point that like I could be home by myself when I was 9 and that wasn't like a problem. Whereas now, there are laws against that, right? So I think a lot of the culture has shifted, and I think that manifests in ways of like really, really kind of being on top of our kids. And I actually saw, I've seen lately, and then this weekend it came up again, this term lawnmower parenting that has kind of developed out of helicopter parent, like it's sort of the next level. And the idea being that these parents are like kind of getting in front of their kids and taking down any possible adversity that they see, right? And I think one of the things I would really like to see shift is letting our kids struggle a little bit and letting them understand that that's totally normal, that's part of life, and that's when you get to those moments where you're like, oh yeah, I get this, right? Like, kind of just going through that process and learning how to solve that problem, and then you get that aha moment, and that's amazing, right? We're depriving our kids of that, right? But we're also starting to see now, especially at like college age and like those kinds of levels, these huge increases in anxiety and depression and just kids that are, young adults that are having all sorts of trouble kind of regulating their emotions and even understanding or recognizing their emotions. And I think part of the way we also fix that is by fixing this same problem, right? Like we let them have time to themselves. We don't get in the way of all of their adversity. We let them know that they're supported and loved, and we're with them and we're going to help them if things get dangerous. But when you watch your toddler start to walk, right, they're going to fall on their butt. That's why we put that big padded diaper on and we put all the little things on the corners. And, you need to let older kids do that too. And I think one of the ways we do that is with play. And in a practical sense, maybe this is part of the solution, this AAP idea of prescribing play and just giving parents permission. But I also think at the school level, I think we as community members and people that are advocating for our kids, like maybe we really push to have things like recess and the arts and all of that really kind of protected and not kind of teaching towards the test, and we start to help schools have permission and ways to change that, and then we can kind of do that on a community level as well.
And I would argue again that with the administrators at the schools, I would say again, play can help you with the test if you teach that, because you develop that creativity and all those kind of different scenarios and how to problem solve. And it's interesting, I want to piggyback on what you kind of said about recess. Recess, I felt like when we were kids growing up, you had it for, I might be exaggerating, but it felt like you were out there all day, maybe an hour. Yeah. It was great. Yeah. And now recess being cut, off air we were talking a little bit about how school lunches now, 15 minutes you get for lunch, and lunch starts at 9:50 in the morning, by the way. Yeah. You're just like, what's going on there? I felt like when I was in high school, I had a good 45, 50 minutes, maybe even an hour for lunch. And again, because you're now trying to cram all this stuff in, and I'm not too sure if that results, if you're cramming it in, if that results in us moving the needle as far as competing for jobs when we get older or things like that. What's your take on that, Dr. Kovar?
Well, I agree with what you've been saying. I mean, I think part of it is, for schools, is letting them have some of the arts and the playtime and the gym time, because it gives them also a chance to not be so hyper-focused on the academic part of school, and that's important. But, lunch is important. I know, I think if I'm not mistaken, in France, kids have an hour and it's an actual, they sit down at a table and they learn, because that's it's a time for them to be social, and that's a huge thing to learn how to interact with people, because now we're so fragmented, that people don't know their neighbors, they don't know some of these things, they don't know that the world around them, and we need that social aspect, and that's where play can come in, be it with the parent or with other kids. And again, when we were kids, it'd be like, hey, I'm going down the street and I'm going to go see if Mike's available. If he's not, I'll go see if Chad is. If he's not, I'll go see if Matt is. Now we have a scheduled play date. You can go see Chad from 1 to 1:45. Then we're going to get in the car for 15 minutes and we're going to go see Mike from 2 to 2. And everything, even play is structured, which, that's a problem with the parents. But for the school, letting kids have some of that and maybe let them think outside the box, because we do have to have those kids that sometimes thinking outside the box is seen as a bad thing. And it's well, you're not doing it, you're not doing it this way. You're not doing math this way. Well, if we're still getting to the answer of 1 + 2 = 3, that's great. If you're going it in a little bit of a roundabout way, it might be a different way of thinking. And that kid that's thinking outside the box, who knows? That might be the person that's going to cure cancer, or that's going to do something, something great in the world. Or if not, they're at least thinking, and that's important. We have to get back to a society of thinkers as opposed to a society of just regurgitators. And sometimes there's so much emphasis with just regurgitate the facts and know that this happened on this date. That's great, but sometimes it's the why. Why did this happen? And that's what we have to do. And sometimes that's where play can come into. Why did this happen? If you're playing and this game didn't go this way, why? What was there something that could have happened that and you can kind of go back and you can kind of relive that, and the parents can go back and teach for the younger kids. Well, you were playing this game, this is why you ended up here, and what was there something we could have done different, and now for the next time you can kind of do it. But also letting parents permit their kids to fail, that's a huge thing, and to do it, because again, we as parents, no one wants their kids to, we don't say, here kids, here's a box of knives and go have fun. We're not going to do that, but kids do have to kind of get dirty and learn from their mistakes, because if they never get a chance to learn from their mistakes, they're never, when something does happen, they're not going to know how to get around that fact. And that's a huge thing for we as parents, that we have to kind of step back and let kids be kids, and we can manage some things, but some things you just have to let the kid learn on their own.
Thank you very much. I want to take a quick time out and a quick plug to our sponsor today, Main Street Candy and Toys. Main Street Candy and Toys of Elmhurst, Illinois, located at 123 North York Street, a family-owned boutique toy store specializing in award-winning toys and gifts for children of all ages, located in beautiful Elmhurst City Center, steps from the Union Pacific West Metro stop. Vetted educational kits, including robotics, circuitry, chemistry, and other science varieties, active outdoor play, pretend play, crafts, books, trains, eco-friendly toys, and architecture/building kits. Gift wrapping, always complimentary. Spreading the joy of play every day. Check them out at www.mainstreetcandyandtoys.com. So again, we're thankful very much for our sponsor to support what we're talking about today, and really developing a partnership. And I want to talk a little bit, speaking of partnership, and I'm going to ask this question to Ken. We're talking right now a little bit about like what can be done at the school level, but what can be done more at the community level, or even at a government level, to try to help move the needle on this issue, allowing kids to be kids.
Right. I think it's really important that the American Academy of Pediatrics has come out with that statement. I think that's going to help a lot. I think in schools, I think teachers and administrators are recognizing, and that, like I was saying before, I think the pendulum is beginning to swing the other way. They're recognizing the importance of play. You were mentioning before lunchtime getting shorter and shorter. We've all experienced times when we're trying to solve a problem and you're in the middle of it, and as soon as you take a break from it and go do something else, go take a shower even, suddenly, eureka, you've found the answer. So we all have experienced that time when you've given your brain a break and let it freely run and do its own thing for a little while. That's what play is all about. So I think as teachers and administrators and school officials start really putting the brakes on it and making it more important as a part of what they do in the schools, then I think communities and our elected officials will recognize the importance of it as well, and put a line in the sand that there has to be a certain amount of free play for children.
Thank you
And
very
then
much.
also, I'm sorry to
Yeah,
piggyback
go
on that,
ahead.
also parks, I think you need to have parks and safe places for kids to go out and play, because that's gonna be a huge thing, because if you're in a community that doesn't have something like that, then where do kids go? And they can't go out and play in the street because there's gonna be someone texting and not looking, and you increase the, so having a safe place for kids just to, hey, go out and run around and just be the crazy kids we all are, go and do that. That's something huge that communities can promote, and so through the government and stuff like that, that would be a great thing for them to do.
I think you read my brain, by the way, like me and you have this connection. No, I was actually going to ask the question about, in relation to communities, and I'll ask you this question, and you can answer this one too, Dr. Kovar. But we think about communities, not all communities have the same resources, and certainly there are communities that are underserved, underprivileged, and we're trying to say, how can a child in that kind of environment who may have some daily struggles that other kids may not have, how can they get play going when they might be having challenges just to sometimes even survive?
Right, and that's, I think that the biggest thing is we have to get the community and get more kind of the elected officials, but also just people in the community to realize, hey, this is a safe spot for kids, and just to let that spot be, so that they can have that opportunity. And it stinks that, that every kid isn't offered that same opportunity to go out and just be a kid, and they have to sit there and think about, well, if I go here, I could get, there's things on the news just now about a little kid who just got shot, and there's, you don't want to have that situation, and that's just not fair. So promoting the communities and the leaders in the communities to kind of give the kids the opportunity, and that's it. And how that happens, I wish there was an easy answer to that, but it would be great to have every kid have that opportunity to have free time to just and again a safe, free place.
Dr. Johnson, from a psychiatric standpoint, and you've worked with some of these children, these families that come from underserved areas or at-risk areas, and here we are trying to talk about play. How do you kind of address that? Because you know if that kid does maybe not get play or have some of those resources, they're going to end up on the wrong path in life when they get to become an adolescent or a young adult.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's a constant worry in a lot of our communities and with a lot of the kids that I work with. There's that balance of, again, sometimes that culture of fear is very, very justified, and there are aspects of it, even as simple as like somebody's not going to be paying attention if they're out in the street and they're going to run over, or somebody's going to have an opportunity to present them with something that they don't need. And I think part of the way we help with that is creating resources even when kids are younger, for whether it's after school programs or other sort of like
Yeah, I think like Big Brother programs, something like that.
Yeah, where they can get a little bit of
Yeah.
mentorship, and we can even again like have them have the ability to kind of relax and play and work through some of that anxiety and build some of those problem solving skills, that so when they're older kids, then they can kind of like navigate those situations with a little more creativity and savvy, and be like, no, you know what, this is not the path I want my life to go down, so how do I get out of this, what do I do? And have a little bit more perspective and insight and kind of all those things. And so I think that I think we could do a whole other series, not even a whole other show, on like how do we address this problem within different communities and within different situations or challenges. But I think really what it comes down to is, we work to support kids at every level as best we can, and with whatever resources we can kind of come up with. And also, I think the longer we do that, again, the more we kind of move towards having more of that, kids growing up with more of that emotional health and more of that perspective, the more we're also, again, going to be able to kind of re-engage in our communities, and the more we're going to be able to say, like, you know what, I can take this perspective and I can see that situation is not what it needs to be, and here's how I can help. Here's a creative solution for how I can help with that. And, so it really is an investment to start early and kind of go, and, we're going to build those resources as we put resources in.
Thank
That
you.
makes sense.
It does make sense. Thank you very much for giving us some of that perspective. And one of the things I always talk about with any kind of health issue is, we want equity, we want an even playing field. We want kids to be kids and have the resources to succeed. We know that equity and access is not there for a lot of the time. So we're trying to work, but it takes things like this, discussion like this, to talk frankly about the problems that we face, but also hopefully propose some solutions and hopefully act on that.
Just to piggyback on that real quick, I think the other thing too is that we always kind of have this idea of like, I have to fix the whole thing. And the fact of the matter is that even if you start to fix the small things, a lot of those are going to snowball, right? But also, the more you fix, the farther along you get, right? So I think even if we can get ourselves to do a few little things, to kind of help the kind of community at large, that's actually going to take us farther than we can possibly anticipate.
We can do it, the power of positivity, there's no doubt, but it takes to engage individuals, and this is just fantastic. I want to ask a question to Kim. So we're looking at play, and play can mean different things to different people. Can you give us a couple examples? We've been talking a little bit more about maybe some of the younger kids, but what does play mean to like the preteen or like the teenager from your perspective?
Sure. So at Astra, which is my organization, our members recognize the importance of play across the lifespan. So from birth to the end.
There you go, birth to
Play,
death.
there you go.
Yeah.
Play is very important for your entire life. You were talking before about play and trying to push the importance of it for the community. I think it starts with playful parents. Parents can play with their kids, and sort of traditionally you'll see dad playing with the kids. It's a more physical kind of play, a little bit of roughhousing.
Oh, I wrestle with my kids all
There
the
you
time.
go.
It's great.
There you go. Dad sort of does that, throw the ball and the
Yeah.
physical kind of play. Mom is a little bit more organized play, a little bit, card game, board game, but still family playing together. That is the start of it. That's how you kind of get that ball going. And the dynamics of everybody playing together. Big brother, little brother, sort of a little bit further, a little bit older, a little bit younger. Everybody playing together. Looking for those games that we can all play, no matter what our age is.
Excellent. Let me ask a question back to Dr. Johnson. What are some of the signs or symptoms that a child may present with if they are maybe overwhelmed or overburdened? Are there any kind of signs to look out for as a parent or caregiver in their kids' behavior?
Absolutely. Anxiety is, of course, one of the first things that kind of comes to my mind. Kids that are worried about, what's going to happen, what if this happens. Kids that are kind of always like tensed up, and a lot of times that can also manifest itself in more physical symptoms. So like muscle pain or stomach aches. Stomach aches are kind of the classic one. Or trouble sleeping at night. Depression in kids can be very similar to adults in the sense of like they just don't enjoy things anymore, or they are feeling sad or looking sad. And remember too that kids may not always have the vocabulary for these kind of things, so they may not say like, "Hey, mommy, I'm sad." They might say like, "This is terrible," or something, or just not look themselves. Depression in kids can also come out as irritability and anger a lot, and I think parents don't always see that quite the same way, right? Like if your kid comes up and is like, "I don't feel good," or "Boy, I'm really sad," or "Oh, what if something happens?" Versus if they come up and they're like, "Everything's terrible and I hate you," right? Like you're going to have a different response to that. But the fact of the matter is, they may still be telling you the same thing, and kids often tell us things not in verbal ways, right? So their actions actually tell us much, much more. And that's part of the reason, like I said, that mastery play or that like imaginative play, if you're kind of watching from the sidelines, you can get a lot of, we actually do that as therapy sometimes. Parents are like, "Why are you just playing with my kids?" I drop him off, and an hour later he's like covered in Play-Doh, and like, "What did you even do?" But kids will tell us a lot in that kind of way. And so kind of watching for those signs. The other thing that I think comes up a lot is, there has been a huge spike over the past, couple of decades in the diagnosis of ADHD. And from the data I've seen, it seems like it is actually underdiagnosed still in some places and kind of overdiagnosed in others. And so we're missing some kids that still need help, and we're kind of pushing a label on others. But I think part of the reason that we're seeing more of that is ADHD kids they do well with structure, but they don't always do well with sort of the traditional educational model, right? So if you're being asked to just memorize a list of things and like dump that back out, their brains may not be able to kind of process that, and they're going to be looking at things from a more abstract, more creative kind of way to begin with. And if you don't give them an opportunity to do that, their school performance is going to tank. And so ironically, to all of the No Child Left Behind and all that stuff, one of the signs of depression, of anxiety, of just being overwhelmed, and maybe your brain just doesn't work this way, is poor school performance. So we're, in some ways we might actually be shooting ourselves in the foot a little bit by teaching the test, and our academic performance, as it said, has actually gone down. So,
Dr. Kovar, from your perspective, and thank you, Dr. Johnson, for giving us a kind of a psychiatric perspective. What are you seeing from a pediatrician perspective? Are you seeing some of the things that Dr. Johnson's saying? Are you seeing things a little bit differently?
I'm seeing it exactly just like she said. We will have the kids coming in. We're seeing a lot more school phobia coming in.
Mm-hmm.
So kids coming in, and we have some kids that refuse to go to school and cannot go to school and are taken out of school for reasons because they're if it's a school performance issue, they just don't want to go. So we have some of those kids, and that's obviously the extreme cases. We have a lot of the stomach aches. We have a lot of the what they call the somatic symptoms. I have a headache, and all the physical manifestations of something that's actually deeper. And again, ADHD, depression, and anxiety, especially in younger kids, they're all very similar. So it's kind of hard to diagnose. And so sometimes someone who has anxiety about something is going to present with not sleeping well, so of course then they're just not going to be functional. I mean, when we don't sleep well, we're not very functional the next day. So now they're in school, they're and kids can get a little hyper. So now they're a little hyper because they're wired from not sleeping well, from some anxiety. So then it's going to come across as, oh well, they're just not learning their space either. And it's like, well, they're anxious about something because they didn't get that chance because they came home from school and they had to go. They had literally 3 seconds to scarf something because they have to go to their basketball practice, and then they're done for basketball practice, then they have to go to their baseball practice, then they have to go do tumbling, and then they have to go pick up their sister from this, and then they have to go, and then they have to do their homework, but now they're finishing their homework at 10:30 and they're in 2nd grade. And there's this push for every kid is, baseball, when I was in baseball, maybe it's just because I was not good, but, we played baseball and that was it, and it was great, but we enjoyed it. And now I'm seeing kids coming, and that's the problem that we're having, is we're seeing some kids doing the, again, quote unquote, fun things, but it's turned into such a, they're in travel, whatever, and it's no longer been as fun because their kids are 8 hours a day of the thing like gymnastics. There are people that are pulled out of school, and the gymnastics coaches are like, well, they can maybe have their schedule so that they have like a lunch and a free period at the end of the day, so we can miss that, so they can come and start gymnastics at 2:30, even though school's done at 3. So something that's supposed to be fun is now turned into a job. And so, like a lot of stuff, if you have something, it's like vacations. Vacations are supposed to be fun, but if there's a lot of planning and all that stuff, suddenly you come back and people always say, I need a vacation from that vacation. Well, it was something that was supposed to be fun, but you've kind of turned it into something that isn't fun. And that's what we're seeing. We're seeing some of those stuff with play. So we're seeing the kids that should have fun with baseball and all that stuff, or I'm just picking on baseball, but I mean baseball, football, whatever, I don't care what it is, but we're seeing these kids not having the fun because it's become a job to them, and it's not having that. So we're also seeing the injuries from the plays. So especially for the kids that are older who are baseball, we're seeing the kids coming in with their elbows, their broken legs or overuse injuries, and we're seeing these at younger ages. And even though there's limits, okay, you can only pitch 30 pitches, 60 pitches, whatever it is. Sometimes some kids, they're also trying to please their parents because that's what kids want to do. They want to please us. And so if a kid's not the best first baseman, they're now getting anxious because, oh, hey, I missed that one, play that was almost impossible to make. And so now they're dwelling on that, and they don't it stops being fun. And that's a sad thing to see kids happen with kids.
And you see that pressure come on not only in that kind of setting where it's supposed to be fun, but then that bleeds into home. And bleeds into school the next day. And then a lot of times your kid gets labeled through the school system, and that's the last thing you want, and you're like, oh my gosh, where do I start? Kim, how do we deal with this?
Through play.
There you go.
So
Love it.
my members, like I said before, they are toy store owners, like your sponsor. What you want to do is go and visit your neighborhood toy store. There you will find folks that have that expertise. What they're going to do is listen to you. Our toy store owners are feet on the floor. They know their products, they walk the floor. When you come in, they'll unbox something, they'll take it out, they'll let you play with it, they'll let the child play with it. They'll give you some insight into what kind of toy you should be purchasing for that age, for that stage of development, for that child's interest. That's what you want to do, is try to find your neighborhood toy store so that you can get some of those insights from our experts. Our organization has a certification program. It's called the Certified Play Expert. Our members who have taken the Certified Play track have learned the science behind play. It's very interesting that you were describing depression. The opposite of play is not inactivity. The opposite of play is depression.
Wow. You know, those words hit home, especially when we're talking about the problem, the nature of the problem right here. We're talking about trying to find solutions to this reality, this growing reality. Things that we didn't have to necessarily face ourselves because, you know, we were, you know, even though we had some structure, it just seems like now this shift is going on. But again, it takes this kind of conversation to talk about it and see how we can offer up some concrete solutions. So we got about 5 minutes left, and so what I want to kind of do is kind of close this down. And again, this has been just fascinating discussion, and really trying to talk about, number one, identifying the problem at hand, but also how can we just go about making a difference one step at a time. Like Dr. Johnson said a few minutes ago, it's just sometimes the little things can lead to that positive snowball, that positive domino effect. So what I want to do as we kind of wrap things up, I mentioned at the beginning of the show, we were talking about the chief complaint, this how do we get to the situation with kids not necessarily having time to be kids and playtime being cut, and we want to talk about play, we want to encourage it. Now we're going to kind of wrap things up. So the assessment and plan is when we kind of, in medicine, we talk about, here's your game plan. It's almost like, all right, you came into my office, this is your diagnosis, and now implement the plan. So I'm going to start with Kim. Why don't you give us a couple like take-home points for our listeners, for our viewers out there, about the importance of play.
So my prescription, and I'm not a doctor, I don't even play
Give
one
us a
on
prescription
TV,
though, I like
but
it.
my prescription is family play. Let mom, let dad, let all the siblings, let's get together, let's play. Find those kinds of activities that are appropriate for everyone. Get in there. Maybe it's physical play, maybe it's we're outside throwing the baseball, maybe it's indoor play, maybe we've got a board game out and we're going to throw the dice and move the pieces, whatever it is, let's interact with one another. Let mom and dad recognize the importance of play. Let the kids learn from mom and dad. How do you behave when you lose? How do you behave when you don't get exactly what you were hoping to get? Let mom and dad be the mentors. Kids learn from that. And that's how they will learn and grow and play.
Thank you, Kim. It's been a pleasure having you on the show.
Thank you.
Dr. Kovar, give us a couple take-home points.
I think a lot of stuff is piggybacking off that. I think the biggest thing is let parents know that it's okay for their kids to fail. It's okay for their kids to just be kids, and they don't have to always have everything related academically, and just you'll be surprised how much time that's not academic actually becomes academic through play, and how kids can solve problems. And when you take a step back and actually look at when you watch kids, it's amazing to see how their minds work, and let their minds work, because they're little computers and they're little sponges and they take everything in, but they can also give you new perspectives. So I think letting a kid just be a lot of times is an amazing thing, and sit back and enjoy the ride.
Excellent. Dr. Johnson?
So I think my take-home points would be, one, remember that, you know, from a brain perspective and from an emotional perspective, play is hard work. Kids are actually doing a lot of work when they're playing. And the other thing is, remember too that we teach, as Kim was saying, we teach our kids best by what we do, right? And so be sure that you're also kind of making your own self-care a priority and giving yourself time to play and have some leisure and just decompress as well, and teaching them that that's important.
Thank you. My kind of take-home points are as follows. Again, we're here today trying to talk about how we move this needle. We know there's a problem going on, and we're trying to offer some solutions. We don't have all the answers, but as we continue to work together, we can get our kids to be kids again. So I want to thank my guests. We have Dr. Kate Johnson, Assistant Professor, Board Certified Adult and Child Adolescent Psychiatrist at Loyola University Medical Center. Check her out, www.loyolamedicine.org. We've got Dr. Stephen Kovar, board-certified pediatrician at Kids First Pediatrics. Check him out, www.kidsfirst.com. And of course, Ms. Kimberly Mosley, president of the American Specialty Toy Retailing Association. Check her out, www.astratoy.org. I also want to thank my sponsor, of course, Main Street Candy and Toys. They've just been a great sponsor for talking about and sharing the same, this common vision for the challenges at hand. Next week on the show, we're going to be talking about living life to the fullest. Again, I'm Dr. G. Check me out, of course. Again, we're here to build that trust and deliver that truth. I'll catch you guys next time. Peace out.